Welcome to the Awesome Marriage Podcast. We are so glad that you're joining us today to talk about decoding needy wives, how to love and support her well. And husbands, what we're talking about today is, do you ever feel like your wife kind of expects too much from you? Well, expectations in marriage are a really common source of marriage tension, which is why today we want to help break down those misunderstandings around your spouse's expectations so that you can experience better connection and more joy in your marriage. So, Dr. Kim, one comment we hear from many wives is that they want or need more emotional connection from their husband. Sometimes they feel like they're talking to a wall. Is this something you see in the counseling room?
Yes, I think it is. I think most wives don't feel like their husbands communicate well or enough. And I think it also goes back to, a lot of times the guy who doesn't communicate in marriage sucked it up and did in the dating. And then
Mm,
you're thinking, but once he got her, he said that was too hard. And
mm,
so, you kind of quit
okay.
doing it.
Mm-hmm.
But I think I think a lot of wives, most wives probably feel that at some point. They feel emotionally disconnected. Yeah, maybe their husband listens, maybe he doesn't, but they
Mm,
really don't actively engage or share their own thoughts or feelings in return. So it becomes
mm-hmm.
very one-sided.
Mm-hmm.
And I know there's times like Nancy, I know all she wants me to do is listen. She don't
Yeah.
mean to fix something.
Yeah.
And then at the end, if she does, she'll ask my input. But I think we're just
Mm-hmm.
talking about things where your wife is trying to connect with you, and your response is, "Well, that's nice," and then you go, "I'm gonna go watch the
Right.
game" or something.
Right.
So it's becomes very one-sided. The wife feels like she's probably carrying all the emotional weight of those
Mm,
conversations by herself. And
mm-hmm.
so I think that happens. And I think what happens eventually, a wife kind of gives up.
Mm,
I mean, there's not, and so
mm-hmm.
then if you try to do it again, it takes a lot more work because you got to let him know that, or let her know that he's not going to walk away now,
Yeah.
and to kind of risk again. So yeah,
Mm,
I think it is. I don't know. I've ever had a couple come in for counseling that said they would rate their communication a 10. And I've had some that it's, there's another problem outside of their marriage and they probably do have a really good communication, 7, 8,
mm-hmm.
somewhere in there. I don't know that any of us have a 10 all the time. I know
Yeah.
we don't for sure.
Yeah.
We'd like to, but we don't. We
Mm-hmm.
can still misunderstand each other. We can still, I think Nancy says something one way and it has no way what she was thinking or trying to communicate.
Right.
So I do think it's a common problem.
Yeah. I mean, I think experience would tell that that is pretty common. And it's interesting that you mentioned that the husbands might kind of like suck it up while they're dating. So there's kind of a basis for a wife to think she would get this kind of connection because maybe she's seen it before with them.
Absolutely, and usually if I go back, well, what was it like before you married? And
Hmm.
I probably 95% of the time, the wife goes, "Oh my gosh, we talked all the time. We talked the
Yeah.
first night we met, we talked for 3 hours."
Sure.
You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
it's there somewhere.
Yeah. No, that does put it in
Yeah.
perspective because you're right. How would you even get to the marriage if there was never that connection?
No, it's just like the pursuit, all the things that go along with pursuit that we do
Yeah.
before marriage. I had a guy yesterday that it was last week, it was so cool. They'd been married 8 or 10 years, and he said, "I just figured out I'm still supposed to be pursuing her." I said,
Yay.
"Yeah, yeah,
Good job. That's
you
great.
are."
Wow.
And better late than never.
Yes.
Yeah.
And things are about to get really fun for them. They're about to have a great
Oh, yeah.
experience.
After she realizes that he's not on drugs or
Right,
drinking
right.
more,
That's
that
what
this
happened.
is really from his heart. God's kinda laid this on him, but he's
Oh,
talked to somebody and they've kinda encouraged him that way.
that is sweet. I'm happy for that guy. And it's cool too to see that these things, sometimes you just learn them at a random time,
Yeah,
and it's great.
yeah, yeah. It
That's
it
good.
it it really is.
That's so good. So, okay, so say you're talking to a husband whose wife wants more connection and he just doesn't really feel like he knows what she wants or how to do it. What are you going to advise him to do?
I think knowing that that's pretty normal.
Okay.
Most men weren't raised to be emotionally expressive, or
Mhm.
we weren't you're really given the tools for this deep emotional connection. I think
Mhm.
it's and honestly in life, your spouse is the one who's really you're supposed to have that more than anyone. But I think growing up, I saw my dad was pretty expressive with my mom. I mean, I think I
Mhm.
had a decent model of that at home, and I knew from watching some other adults what I didn't want. So, I mean, somehow I figured out in there. But I think it's starting small, active listening, maintaining eye contact, getting rid of distractions,
Mhm.
looping back on what you say, those kind of things. Follow-up questions to show that you are engaged or you're trying to understand, and knowing that, like I said, I think in another podcast, you don't have to solve everything.
Yeah.
Many times your wife wants to feel heard and understood. And
Mhm.
so that helped a lot when Nancy and I figured that out. And I'd say, would you just tell me if you want me to solve this? Tell me. If you just want
Mhm.
to talk through it and then maybe ask me something, just let me know, because
Yeah.
my mind, and still does, go to fixing it. And so I have to get out of that. And I think that helped me a lot because I think I heard her better, because
Mhm.
I would hear her all the way through instead of about halfway through. Okay, if she does this and this and this, so I've got the solution out here. Well, that's not what she wanted.
Right.
Sometimes if she asks it, she does, but
Yeah.
most of the time she didn't want that. And so I think all of those kind of things go in really good, and how you can get what she needs at that point.
Yeah, that's such a good point because as the husband, you're not just a captive audience. You can kind of ask back, like, what is it you want from me? What do you need right now? And so you can collaborate with her even in the conversation to make sure you're both on the same page about what's the point of this
Right.
conversation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. That's good. And one thing Brian's been really good to ask of me. He will say, "Okay, can you give me a title page for the conversation?" And so then I think about it for a minute and I say, "I just need to like work some things out. Can I just kind of say some, it's
Yeah.
like a rough draft conversation where I just need to get some feelings off my chest, or it could be something a little more directed." But then he kind of knows what he's getting into. And he can say, you know what, I want to hear you. So can we do this after dinner instead of now? I don't want to be distracted. It's a collaborative situation instead of just kind of like, I'm going to talk to you and you're going to take it.
I think it's so good because I think that the timing is so important, and
Yeah.
sometimes we just the time it's not the right time.
Yeah.
And so Brian being able to say that,
Hmm.
and you knowing he's going to follow up on that. I mean, if
Yeah.
you put it off, you got to follow up on it.
Yep.
He
Hmm.
can't park himself in front of the TV and they'll
Right.
see you
No.
tomorrow. It's so, yeah, I think that the timing, because you can do all those things that we talk about, that you need to really listen to someone
Hmm.
without the distractions and eye contact and all those kind of things.
Yeah. Yeah. And then it's cool because for me, then I'm like, oh, well, I can do that too. If he's wanting to talk about something, I can be like, oh
Yeah.
gosh, I'm super distracted right now. If you could finish the kitchen together and then we'll sit down together, that kind of thing. Just have that open communication of what are we trying to communicate? Is it a good time? Can I give you what you need type of thing?
Yeah, example that happened yesterday. I was writing, and so Nancy came in and she had something we want to talk about. I said, I've got to finish these thoughts. And she said, how long? And I said, probably 5 minutes or less. So she just sat down in the chair over there and did some things till I got
Mhm.
through. And then I went over and sat in the other chair and we talked about it. So, and it didn't offend her that,
Yeah.
she knows that if I'm writing and I stop, sometimes that never comes back again. It's
Yeah.
like, where
Yeah.
did that go? And so, yeah, it's just working together on those things.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good. That's
Yeah.
really good. So let's talk about what are some of the other common needs or expectations that wives tend to have of their husband in marriage?
Well, I think a wife wants to feel prioritized,
Mm.
that we as the husband make time for them, no matter how busy our schedule is.
Hmm.
How many people do you ask, how are you doing? Busy. I mean, that's kind of has been a
Yeah.
buzzword for a while. I'm ready for it to fade off
Yeah.
because I'm tired of
Yes.
hearing it, because we're all busy. Honestly, we're all busy in some extent. So I think prioritize that you have time for them, and I think it's even more effective when your wife knows you're so busy and you still make time for her,
Yeah.
that you've chosen her over something else.
Yeah.
I think wives want to be involved in the decision making
Hmm.
and feel like this is a partnership. And you can define that for yourself. What are the decisions that we really need to both, know? If you're at the grocery store and it's between flakes and sugar pops, make the
Right.
decision,
Right.
bring them the sugar pops, and your wife probably won't like that sugar. But I don't know if they make sugar pops anymore.
I couldn't
Anyway,
tell you. I'm
I
not
don't either.
shopping for them, so I don't
Nope.
know.
Both regular affection, intimacy,
Mhm.
physical and non-sexual.
Mhm.
But this non-sex, to me, the more there's that non-sexually, the better the sexual is,
Mhm.
because it's not, you don't want your wife to feel used.
Yeah.
And so if you're affectionate with her non-sexually throughout the day, the week, I think it makes the sexual intimacy that much better. She needs your support with things around the house, family,
Mhm.
household responsibilities. Always, Andy Stanley taught me that years ago. Always ask your wife every day, what can I do to help you today? Most days Nancy says nothing. But there's times that she says yes. And the fact that I ask that every day,
Mm. Mhm.
and even sometimes like when if she's cooking dinner and some, but our kitchen is where the living area is there. And so I may be sitting there reading something or maybe looking at something and I'll just go over and say, what can I help you do?
Mhm.
And sometimes she says, yeah, if you could do this, or if you could watch this till it boils or something like that. And sometimes she says, no, just relax.
Mhm.
And so it's that communication about that, but always letting her know that you are willing to do those things to help around the house.
Mhm.
And then I think too, something so important for guys to do, and that is to show our appreciation and acknowledge them for their contributions.
Mm.
Nobody else is going to acknowledge them for being a great wife
Mhm.
or being a great mother, in most cases.
Yeah. Yeah.
She's got to hear it from you. She's got to have that need met by
Mhm.
you. And when it does, I think it helps. I think I would say what I see in Nancy is that kind of makes it all worthwhile for her.
Mm.
It's like,
Mhm.
yeah, I'm doing this. I know I'm doing it because this is where God's put me, and He's given me abilities to do that. But boy, it's nice when my husband says that you do such a good job. You're the best
Mhm.
wife in the world. I can't believe. I wish every mother was like you. Those kind
Mhm.
of things make a lot. And then I think the last thing I think is to protect them and give them security,
Mhm.
whether it's emotional or practical, defending them. I think that's our role as a husband,
Mhm.
is to protect my family, to make them feel secure, to know that, and the secure, a lot of times it comes to finances. I think every
Mhm.
wife today, most couples that I work with, the wife works. Wife wants to know, if I didn't work, he's
Mm.
going to take care of me
Mhm.
financially. If we decide to have this baby and I don't work for 2 years,
Mhm.
he's going to take care of me, and the
Yeah.
security that comes like that. So those are things I think that can really help connect you, can really
Mhm.
show that you care, and just to meet some of those needs and expectations that our wives have. And none of those are out of things you couldn't do. They're all
Yeah.
easy to do.
Yeah, or, in theory, at least, they could be
Yeah.
easy. I think
Yeah.
so.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's a good list, and it sounds pretty basic, I'd say.
That's kind of what I wanted. Something's basic, and yeah, maybe
Mhm.
some of them depends how you flesh some of those out. If
Sure.
she wants you to paint the house this weekend, yeah, that's probably a little unrealistic.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, but no, but that's good, and I think that that's a good starting place for maybe talking about, what those expectations are. If you just have this sense that your wife needs so many things from you, but you don't know what they are, well, that's gonna feel a lot heavier than if you know what she wants and needs from you.
Absolutely. And I think it's a good point to bring up, because I think there is still people that believe the myth that you should be able to read each other's minds,
Oh, I know that's true, yeah.
and we can't. And
Yeah.
so even after 55 years, a lot of times I do know,
Yeah,
but there's
yeah,
times I have no idea. I can't read
yeah.
her mind. And so I need to ask her, what do you need right
Mhm,
now? Nancy's so easy to read, facial expressions, body language. I can tell
mhm,
when something changes. And so
mhm.
if she hasn't told me, or I'm not aware of it because of whatever it is, yeah, just ask.
Yeah. No, that's really good.
Yeah.
That's really good, and clarifying that too, because I think that you mentioned a few minutes ago that the idea of kind of looping back in conversation,
Yeah.
and I think that's one place that can be easy to skip over because, we're being general here because we're, talking about wives versus husbands, but if you're being general, a lot of men are a little more to the point in conversation. They're not so much fleshing things out, and so you mentioned the technique of looping in communication. That's really gonna help you clarify, "Am I hearing you? Am I hearing what you're saying?" Would you just quickly define that technique just for our listeners?
Yes. I like that better than kind of the where you just repeat back what they're saying. I think
Mhm.
looping is, I heard what you say. This is what I heard you say.
Yeah.
And you're able, I don't know, it just seems to flow better that
Yeah.
way, and then you can clarify it.
Sure.
Yeah, that your spouse really did hear what you want them to hear,
Yeah.
because you do. And you won't remove any barriers that keep that from happening.
Yeah, and I mean, I think when you start using this technique, you'll be surprised how many times you heard something that is not what your spouse was trying to tell you. It's
No.
really helpful.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah. So let's talk about this. It's a tough question, but we have to ask it. Do you think wives tend to do a good job of asking for what they want and need and making those expectations clear?
I think a lot of wives struggle to communicate clearly. They
Mm-hmm.
don't want to come off as demanding or nagging.
Yeah.
Maybe they grew up and that's what their mom did, and they said, "I'll
Mm,
never do that with my husband." Maybe they assume their husband, kind of like we said, that intuitively he knows what their needs are,
mm-hmm.
and we don't just because we're wired different.
Yeah.
I don't. I know more now than I did when we first got married, just because of living with her for all these years. But that's from living together. It wasn't because I
Mm-hmm.
intuitively just no, oh, yeah, she needs that right now. I don't know that. I think they don't want to. Maybe they. This kind of goes back to what you said. Maybe it's hard for them to say what their emotional needs are in a terms the way their husband can hear it, like in concrete terms. Where
Mm-hmm.
guys, like you said, they need 1, 2, 3, 4, and so trying to translate that in a way that your husband can hear,
Mm-hmm.
because there is a difference. If you're sitting with your girlfriends and you're talking about needs and wants and expectations,
Mm-hmm.
they're probably gonna get you,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
But your husband's different. He's
Mm-hmm.
male. He's built different. Doesn't mean he doesn't love you, but
Yeah.
it's got to be, how do you communicate that? I think too. One thing that I see sometimes that I think is really hard, that when women do this, is they just kind of hint at their needs instead
Mm-hmm.
of stating them directly.
Yeah.
Just kind of he should pick up on this hint.
Yeah.
You know, and
Mm-hmm.
maybe he will sometimes, but that's not the way. I'd rather you say, Nancy, say, "Hey, I need this."
Yeah.
Great, great, like that. And I think sometime wives wait, I see, until to communicate until they are frustrated already.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's not going to come off good, rather than being proactive.
Yeah.
What things we talked about, sitting down and having those conversations. What do you need from your spouse? What are expectations? Are you both on board with that? Then you're being proactive. But if you wait until and you haven't communicated things, you're just going to keep getting frustrated over and over again. And your
Yeah.
spouse sometimes, what's wrong with her? I don't know why she's
Right.
frustrated all the time, you know?
Right. You're supposed to know. You better
Yeah.
know.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's a mess. That's a whole mess. And I think it's interesting because you mentioned the hinting, and I think that's really a common one. It can go both ways. Both spouses can do it. But I wonder too, since we're speaking on, mostly Christian couples, I think in the Christian culture, sometimes women in particular are taught to be nice and to be servant hearted. Of course, men are taught this too, but women, I think in the church are more likely to want to be, you want to be a good wife, you want to be servant hearted, you want to be nice and kind and polite, and I think that can really skew our ability to be clear at times. And I mean, I'm speaking in the South too. I know Southern communication can be a little indirect, so I don't know wherever you're at, it might be different, but it's an interesting thing because I've been learning just how that distinction for women, Christian women particularly, makes it hard to be clear. But clarity is kind. Being clear with your husband is a help to him. He wants to know what you're saying. He doesn't need to be made to guess or be a detective. So I think I want to free women up to say, you know what? It helps him when you can articulate it. It helps you when you can articulate it. Then you can actually work on this.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. You just don't go, oh, my car is so dirty.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Instead of saying, honey, my car is filthy. Do you mind? I know you were going to
yeah,
take it to the car wash on Saturday. Could you do it today?
yeah, yeah.
You know,
Hmm.
it's so.
Yeah. I mean, I've just heard it more times than I can even say it. It's funny because most men are not picking up on that.
No, say, "Oh, I'm
No.
sorry. Didn't I buy
Yeah.
you a car club membership?"
Right. Right. Why is it dirty?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. So I think, I mean, it is a help when you can be more direct.
Because most of the time, I think when you're doing that consistently, your husband's he wants to know that. He wants to serve
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
And he may be lazy at that because maybe in the past you haven't communicated clearly. So he hadn't jumped
Hmm.
right to action. But all that
Hmm.
can be changed with some conversations and with some kind of new direction of how you're going to handle these things.
Yeah, totally. Well, yeah. So moving on to that, getting things more out in the open. No one's going to be perfect at meeting their spouse's needs, but what can a husband in this situation do to keep these things from being a point of tension?
Well, I think regular check ins. Just like
Mhm.
we talk about that almost every episode to some because it's
Mhm.
so important. And the couples that I see doing that, one thing I've started suggesting to couples I'm counseling with that just have trouble doing that or what we're going to talk about is using one of our resources, the what is it, questions to ask your spouse.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, to help your spouse open up.
Yeah, 1, 2, 3, and just
Okay.
to keep that and just pick 2 or 3 of those, and as you
Mhm.
get used to that, then I think you can transition to some different things, or maybe you keep doing some of those. Just
Yeah.
anything to have that check-in, and then also the weekly check-in we have, I think, is huge. To
Mhm.
just at the first of the week to just take chin with each other. There's a couple of questions to help you get a little deeper,
Mhm.
not scary deep, but a little deeper. I
Mhm.
think that really helps. Active listening without trying to fix it.
Mhm.
I think we've all got to get past that because I've had so many wives tell me I don't want him to fix it over and over and over, and he just thinks he's helping
Yeah.
because we
Yeah.
are different. If I'm telling my best friend about stuff, I want him to fix it. I
Yeah.
want him to give
Yeah.
me some ideas here, and so totally different conversations.
Mhm.
I think expressing appreciation, can't get those words
Mhm.
out, I think is a really really good.
Mhm.
If there's needs that that your wife wants you to meet, take the initiative
Mm.
at
Mhm.
times in meeting those.
Mhm.
Just do it. When I do when I can sense that Nancy is tired
Mm.
and I do something as simple as making the bed, emptying the dishwasher,
Mhm.
vacuuming her car, it means so much to her.
Yeah.
And so there's some of those things that over time you're going to figure out. Well, this is something that needs to be done that I can do. Follow through on commitments that you make.
Mhm.
I was thinking of a couple of workers years ago. He was going to build a deck, and I worked with them for 3 years. Deck was still not built,
No.
and we talked about other things, but we would always loop back to
Yeah.
that. And his answer was, "Yeah, I'm gonna get right on that."
Oh,
And he had
boy.
all the stuff.
Yeah.
And probably some of the wood was rotted by now because it hadn't been
Yeah.
treated and it had been
Oh,
laying out and
no.
things like that. Empathy, I think, can play a big part of this. What's the need behind what she's asking?
Mhm. Mhm.
And try to understand that from her perspective. I mean, yeah, you can just do it. But
Yeah.
sometimes if I really understand maybe I go another step because I understand what's going on.
Yeah.
But I think that really connects. If Nancy knows I understand why she's asking me to do this,
Mhm.
I think that draws us closer together. It's another point of connection.
Yeah. What if he doesn't understand? What if he's like, "I don't know why she wants me to do this?"
Do it.
Mhm.
Just do it. You can talk about it later, but
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
just do it. There are things that Nancy has asked me to do definitely many times. I have no clue why she wants this done,
Mhm.
you know?
Mhm.
But she does, and our life is better when I do them. And I do want to serve her. So, I had a guy one time in counseling and she was talking about the emotional needs that she had, and he said, "I don't want to talk about needs. I want to talk about facts."
Yeah.
And it was just such a picture of their marriage, and I kind of looked at
Mm.
him and said, "We need to talk. You
Yeah.
got to figure this out." But
Yes.
I think some guys, either for whatever reason, maybe growing up he didn't learn that, maybe growing up he had bad experiences or whatever. But it's like
Mhm.
we're staying on the facts. It's not logical.
Yeah.
None of her needs that she has there are logical at all. So I'm not going to meet him.
Yeah.
And so you don't want to go into that. You
No.
want to, and I think you learn from your more about your spouse as you do things like that. Okay, I may never totally understand why Nancy wants me to do this, but I know it makes her happy. I know it draws us closer, and I know it takes a load off of her. So I'll do it.
Yeah.
And I'm
Yeah.
not perfect in it. I don't want to ever come out. I can still say that. No, I won't even say it.
Yeah. It's interesting when you brought up the man who wants to talk about facts, because I think that can be really tricky with guys when, the wife has some feelings and he's like, I don't get it. Like, I don't think that's what you should be feeling, or like, I don't understand that feeling. I've heard a lot of people say, well, that feeling's not true. It's just a feeling. And that is a real buzzkill for the connection building.
Yes, you're just totally discounting her
Right.
and her
Right.
feelings and her
Hmm.
emotions
Hmm.
because you don't understand them. Usually, it's
Yeah.
where I see that, or you don't want to understand them
Yeah.
because I might have to be vulnerable if I do that.
Mm. Hmm. Hmm.
So, yeah, I think you're right in that. And so I think if a wife can say, just like we talked, I need to talk this through like you did with Brian.
Mhm.
And then if it is something task oriented you want us to do, give us bullet points. I mean,
Mhm.
understand how we're going to hear something on that because there's not probably emotion attached to those things.
Right, right, right.
And
Mhm.
so if you can put it in a bullet point, can you do this, this, and this?
Mhm.
Most guys are going to do it. If
Yeah.
it's emotional, is where we struggle that we've got to work on with you.
Yeah. Yeah, so, I mean, is there a way to bullet point that to say, like, you know, it's hard because when you're in a situation, you wanna connect with your husband, you wanna be able to share some things, your mind's kinda in a million directions. So it's like, how do you kinda set this up for success so you can say, "I just wanna talk about my feelings right now," without, without you telling me that they're wrong or something.
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. And I don't know. I think that's as a wife, could you bullet point those things? I mean, I think that would be more
Sometimes
but not usually, right?
I don't think so. I mean, I'm not trying to skate out of it. I think that would be a skill that grows over time. I think with practice, you can grow. And I think it's going to have to be baby steps because I think, if you're talking to your girlfriends, you're never going to be like, okay, I'm going to give you the rundown so that then you can, it's like you just launch into it. It's just how we are. And so, again, going back to personality, family of origin stuff, I think it's something you grow. And if the husband can ask for it, that
Yeah,
will help cue that.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's good. That's what I feel, and so I think it's learning to say things that your spouse can hear in the way
Yeah.
they receive that. And then I think over time you kind of maybe you grow a little closer in those areas. Maybe
Yeah.
I don't know that Nancy ever bullet points things though.
Yeah. Right.
I don't remember any time where she did.
That's so much work. You've got to do the work before you process it. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Or
But I mean, I'm just thinking those conversations where, it's like, oh, here she goes again. Well, no, you know her. You
yeah,
know she wants to talk. Like, don't hold that against her.
right.
Like,
Exactly.
this means a lot to her. Yeah.
And just accepting how God made us different. And
Yeah.
there's a reason God wants me to listen to her,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. Yes. It really does bring that connection.
Yeah.
So let's talk about what can a husband do in this situation to get more clarity about his wife's expectations and talk about what is or is not realistic. I mean, we talked about the bullet points, but what are some other things he can do if he just kind of feels like, I don't know?
One thing I think, and you can do this with the weekly checkup, is really just how do you rate your marriage right now? What's the state of your marriage 1 to 10? You say, well, I think it's an 8. And she says a 6. And so you say, okay, how do I help you get it up a notch? I
Hmm.
think that's a real practical way, and it allows her to be specific about something that you can do. And it may be a little more of a conversation, but I think a lot of times wives have in their mind, I think this would help our marriage. And so
Mm-hmm.
it gives you a chance because they think about it more than we do, I think, most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
I think you can ask specific questions about what does meeting that need for you look like? Give me kind of a roadmap of doing
Mm-hmm.
that, so there's more clarity to it of what
Mm-hmm.
the house is dirty. Okay. Today I'd like to help you clean. What's the thing you least like to clean? And let me start
Mm-hmm.
there. Or
Mm-hmm.
so,
Yeah.
things like that
Yeah.
that give more clarity. I think too, the more information. So if Nancy wants me to do something and maybe I'm having struggled, if she can just give me an example, I think that helps
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
very much to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever it is, discussing priorities together.
Mm-hmm.
I think when a couple can get your priorities, you got your faith, your values, your priorities, when you kind of have those lined out, I think it makes it easier to say, oh, that it falls into our priorities. Of
Yeah.
course, we can do that. Where you've kind of got a roadmap to go to. Writing things down, I
Mm-hmm.
think sometimes because I can forget things.
Yeah.
Nancy
Yeah.
forgets things. I asked her to send me a deal that a friend of ours had text something that I needed, and so she came in the office, and I said, "Hey, will you text me that?" It didn't come. It didn't come. It
Yeah.
come. So when I got up to go get some water or something, I said, "Hey, did you text me that?" She goes, "Oh, no, I forgot." So those things happen,
Yeah.
and that's probably not something she needed to write down.
Yeah.
And then I think to continue to have those conversations.
Mm-hmm.
It's probably not going to be one thing that's going to take care of the needs of the rest of your marriage.
No.
So building those in where you have those regular conversations where you just kind of talk about needs, how are we doing on this, those kind of things. What do you need from
Mm-hmm.
me? Those kind of things. And so I think it's just asking good questions, setting aside the time for those conversations, fleshing it out, look at examples, priorities, those kind of things. All of those I think help come together to give you clarity about
Yeah.
her situations and help get to the point, okay, what's realistic and what's not.
I think that's really good. And, just starting the conversation is going to be so encouraging for her to hear, hey, I'm interested in building our marriage. I want to work as a team on this. I
Yeah.
mean, that initiative is really what wives want so much from their husband because we see he's got initiative about his work. I mean, hopefully, maybe not. He's got initiative about, his fantasy football team or his, sports,
Yeah.
whatever. Like, put some initiative in the relationship and it will really go a long way with her.
Hmm.
That's what we want to see. And not just in the bedroom. We want to see some initiative towards what can we do together? How can we work together? I mean, that in itself is huge.
I agree. I agree. And boy, the more you get into that, the better your marriage is going to be.
Oh, yeah.
Just
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah. Cause I think I mean, you said at the start of that little point about how she's probably thinking more about building the relationship because I think there's something in us that God just designed. We're thinking about the relational aspect of things more. And that's not a bad thing. It's just if we can kind of
No.
meet in the middle on that, that can be so helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's just playing out our roles in marriage. God
Yeah.
gave each one of us a significant role.
Yes.
And I can't do Nancy's roles, she can't do my roles. So we both
Hmm.
have to do that together.
Yeah, that's so good. And then when you do, when you work together in the roles instead of just kind of like you do your role, I'll do my role, then it can be so beautiful.
It is. It's when you high five each other,
Yeah.
you know,
Mhm.
which is fun. We do that a lot.
That's so good.
Yeah.
That's so good. So let's talk about if we have a husband listening today and he just feels like his wife needs things from him then he cannot do. What is his next step?
Marriage counseling, I think, would be really good. If you
Mm.
feel really stuck, you need
Mhm.
somebody, kind of a professional to help you guide. I think so. I
Mhm.
think for guys, joining a men's group or finding a mentor for support is really
Mhm.
good. When you join a men's group, and I've had guys, and that's kind of hard for some guys,
Yeah.
but I've heard them say, "Oh, I thought I was the only one that had this problem in my marriage." And they
Mhm.
find out, no, everybody does. It just may play out a little bit different. So
Yeah.
I think a men's group or a accountability partner, mentor really helps you just to kind of talk through and understand those things.
Mhm.
What is emotional intelligence and connection? Do you know what that is? How
Mhm.
can you connect with her? So there's some books out. You can read some books, you can listen to podcasts, you can
Mhm.
do something to learn a little more about that. And then you can take small steps,
Mhm.
to help get you there. I think sometimes guys get overwhelmed because they think I gotta go to A to Z tomorrow, and I
Mhm.
I can't, but I go to B tomorrow, I
Yeah.
think, and so you take small steps, um, before you and I think this is real important for us, make sure you understand your wife before you start problem solving,
Mm. Mhm.
because if you do, and it is something that needs to be solved, you wanna make sure you really have everything from her perspective on things
Yeah.
and where she
Yeah.
wants to go, because then I think it makes it easier, and if it comes down to you've got to be the one to make the decision. If
Mhm.
you've listened to your wife and you valued that and you prayed together about it,
Yeah.
then it's a lot easier for her to say, yeah, you need to make the decision on this and
Yeah.
trust you and walk away from it, not
Yeah.
to second guess you the whole time. And so, in the big picture, I would say just remember that the small, consistent things you do, these efforts, they matter more than perfection.
Mhm.
Perfection is something you're never going to get to.
Mhm.
I don't think I haven't got there yet, but I think the efforts that I do day to day consistently make a difference. And
Yeah.
that's all you can do about just today anyway,
Yeah.
you know, and,
That's
and then do it again tomorrow. And you're going to fall off, but don't fall off and go the other way.
right.
Like we talk about in praying together and stuff. If you miss one day, don't miss two. Same thing with this. If you are doing good and then you think I'm just off today, or something happens, this irritates you, just okay, that's today. Pray, start over tomorrow.
Yeah. That's so good. That's a
You know,
great tip. I mean, just if you fall off, get back on.
get back on that
Get
horse.
back on. It's going to be worth it for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I mean, if you're listening to the podcast, you're already a step ahead. You're not
Yes.
just listening to your whatever thing that men like to listen to. There are so many podcasts you could be listening to, and this one's getting you step in the right direction. But I think take that next step to go a little further with that emotional intelligence, these types of things. seeing that initiative, I'm going to hammer it again because I think it just matters. I mean, knowing that you care to put the effort and time into it is so important to a wife. And so I think
Oh, yeah.
let her catch you. Share the show notes with her, for the couples conversation guide to her.
Yes.
She's going to feel so valued that you're starting the conversation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it just puts you on a healing path, a growth path instead of where you are right now or
Yeah.
where the direction you're headed, for sure.
Yes. Yeah, and I think too, if it's a wife listening and she's getting some insight here, send it to him. Be like, maybe I'm needy sometimes. Just throwing it out there. I
Yeah.
think we all
Yeah.
could be. It's like
Absolutely.
if we can admit that and say we want to work together here, it's going to be a step in the right direction.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's good.
Yeah. It's so good as you do these things and then you see it work,
Mm-hmm.
and it will. And sometimes we get impatient, so you got to have patience,
Mm-hmm.
but just continuing to work on it, and that encourages you both.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm working harder than Nancy, it's okay. If she's working harder than me, it's okay. And I've seen it happen in our marriage just because
Yeah.
of different situations. Sometimes she's
Mm-hmm.
working harder at meet my needs than I'm at meeting hers. And sometimes I think I'm doing a better job, but we don't rate it. It's just like we're always trying to do that for each other.
Yeah.
And when you do that, it's just, I don't know, it's not a burden. I think some people may listen more sense and, God, that's going to take a lot of time and energy. Probably, but it's going to be worth it.
Yeah.
Because if you want this marriage to last 50, 60 years or more, you don't want to be miserable for all that time.
No.
You don't want to be, not connected that whole time, living
Yeah.
as roommates. So do the things that will help you get the most out of this marriage.
Yeah, absolutely. Because what's really bad for draining your energy is a bad marriage. If you're stuck in a marriage that you're not happy in, that is a huge drain on your
Right.
energy.
Right.
It's wasting your time, wasting your energy. You deserve to put in the work and time to get the marriage God has for you.
Yeah, absolutely. The new book working on, which I don't know what it's about, that Lindsay is going to edit again, but I call it emotional synergy. And it's really just when the spouses work together to understand each other, to manage their emotions, to create a stronger relationship, which is the whole purpose. Then we go into the different things that can make that happen. But emotions are just a big part of a relationship. And guys don't have to be afraid of it. And the more we learn how to do those things and do them together, it makes such a difference in your marriage.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you're going to reap the benefits of it for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So Dr. Kim, this has been such an information-packed episode on helping decode needy wives. Do you have any final piece of advice for our listeners today?
Well, if you think your wife is needy, don't just kind of write that off. What can you do as a husband? How do you love her well? How do you support her well? God puts you in her life for a reason. You are equipped to do something nobody else can do in her life. And so just take a small step forward. Maybe it's talking to some other guys. Maybe it's get some counseling. Maybe it's reading or listening to something. But take a step to kind of get you on this path of loving and supporting her well. And I think the neediness is going to change when you do that. It's not going to be needing. There's a difference between neediness and someone telling you their need.
Yes.
Because
Yes.
neediness, sometimes there are a lot of negative things go along with that, of how
That's true.
it plays out. And it's
Yeah.
never direct to what I really need. So
Mm-hmm.
I would encourage to take a step and see what happens. Try it for 6 months, see where your marriage is, and then let us know.
Yeah.
What did God do?
Yeah. Email us at info@awesomemarriage.com. We're waiting. We want to hear it.
We're here. Yes.
Yes. You are the guy for the job. You're there. You're ready.
Right.
You've got what you need. God's equipped you, and He will continue to.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, we mentioned some resources in today's episode. We'll link those in the show notes below. Again, you can share those show notes with your spouse if you're listening today and want to start the conversation. And whatever we have there, we're just wanting to make this conversation more practical and applicable for you and for your marriage. So again, thanks so much for spending time with us today. Have a great day and do something awesome for your marriage today.